Welcome back to the Newsmaker Hour. The Blockchain Task Force has released its recommendations on regulating and promoting the industry in the city of Zug. Federal Councillor Johann Schneider-Ammann received the recommendations presented in a white paper drawn up by around 50 industry leaders at the Blockchain Summit on Thursday. Well, my colleague Amanda Kayne met today's newsmaker Eva Kaili in Zug. She's a member of the European Parliament and she tells us how she's going about creating legal certainty without killing off the dynamics of innovation.
Now, Eva, some people say that blockchain is going to be the next internet. It's going to change the world. Do you believe the same?
Well, I believe it has the potential, but it will take some time to develop this technology and to figure out what has to be improved and the potential, because I don't think even the developers themselves, they know how far it can get. But the truth is, I think it's an exciting technology.
And how far along do you think we are in terms of realizing the full potential of blockchain?
Well, actually, we're already exploring applications, and we do believe it can dramatically change the way, for example, even we vote, and this would remove the cost. So I'm starting from our side. And the e-governance, we could have a lot of things on blockchain to reduce bureaucracy also in the parliament, for example, in the governments. At the same time, I do think that we can improve the financial sector, which means the cost that we have, the hidden fees of transactions, which is over 120 billion per year, hidden fees. It has a lot of room to improve with fintech technologies and, of course, blockchain technology.
Okay, let's start with the government, because you say we could be able to use blockchain to vote. How far away are we from being able to do that?
Actually, there are already applications developed on blockchain that you can vote, and you can have anonymous voting, of course. It's not with your name, but you can see live the way that people vote, the participation, how it moves. You can also have some identification if it's men, women, and in which region. I think this is an excellent tool that I've seen work. It's working already. And not just one, I have seen like 2 to 3 different applications. So it depends how you want to use it.
Why do we need it? Why do we need blockchain to vote? What's not working, how we vote now?
Well, you know, when blockchain was actually invented, it was a response to not trusting the traditional institutions. So I would say, if you suggest a way of a technology that cannot be altered, the history cannot be deleted, and it's immutable, I think people feel that they can trust it. And if you educate them also to use it properly and to protect their privacy, it can give them amazing potential to feel that there is trust and to use it more and more. For example, there are countries, maybe not in Europe, but even in Europe, where you're not sure that your vote is being counted, not altered, and that the result was not being touched. So I would say in countries like that, being on blockchain, you can go back and see that your vote has not been altered. And of course, a matter of cost also, because you can vote on your phone, so you can reduce the cost of elections from, let's say, if it's a million normally, you can pay 100,000 euros to have a voting.
Now, open the doors for us to your world in Brussels. You're a member of European Parliament. What's the word there? I mean, what are people saying behind closed doors, other members of Parliament, about blockchain? What needs to happen?
Well, I can tell you that at the moment I'm just working on the resolution on blockchain from the Industry and Research Committee, and we are very supportive. I have support from my colleagues from different parties and countries.
Maybe just explain to me what the resolution is.
So the resolution shows the approach that we have, which is supporting this technology. Actually, we are asking for sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes. This means people can explore the potential without being afraid that they're going to have legal issues. And that we're also monitoring to find where we need to interfere with, some smart regulation, but not on the technology, but the applications. So I would say you can see that Europe is supportive. Behind doors, they would talk about an exciting technology that can be a revolution, like the internet, as you mentioned before.
So if I understand you correctly, you're not working to regulate the technology at the moment, because that's still in early stages.
Yes.
But the applications, what's the difference between the technology and the applications?
Well, actually, it's like if I tell you that we're regulating internet, or we're regulating Google, Facebook, and how they should comply with our principles. So we're not touching, we're technology neutral actually, and business neutral. These are two principles that we're following. And this makes it innovation friendly. So you can use the technology, and if the use that you decided to apply and develop creates problems or legal issues or tax issues, then we go there and we try to ask you to improve that, or that by default you have to follow some rules. But we don't touch the technology. The initial technology is like, it's treated as an infrastructure. So an infrastructure is there. The way you use it, it's up to you and up to us to regulate.
Do you believe that every country, let's say in Europe, is working in the same way and approaching blockchain in the same way?
I would say some countries, they don't even explore blockchain. But I have good news. Just a week ago, 22 countries signed to work together on blockchain applications and solutions. The first would be health data, how they can be protected actually by blockchain. So I would say they're starting to understand that blockchain is something really important. But there are countries like Switzerland and countries, of course, like Gibraltar and Luxembourg, even France, that they are more developed and they understand the technology and they try to follow all the use cases. But some, they have nothing on that.
The technology is complex, if I'm not mistaken. In terms of trying to understand it and ensuring that we're all speaking the same language, are the same terms used universally?
Well, we are also trying to have a common definition, so you make a good point. If I could just have a short definition, I would say they're distributed, decentralized databases. So that would be the shortest one. But what that offers is you can have peer-to-peer exchange, transaction of value, without intermediaries, so disintermediation. And I see potential in any field, the energy sector, health sector, financial sector, and governance, of course, as I mentioned. So we're exploring also the way we can define it properly, because not just the blockchain, but as I said, the currencies, the ICOs, the tokens, because the definition could create tax implications, legal problems. And we have really to be careful to make sure that we're making the right definition.
And do you believe it's, say, members of parliament that have this responsibility? Whose responsibility is it essentially to make sure that we are supporting blockchain and various technologies, the ICOs, and getting them to a point and helping them to get to a point they need to be at?
Well, it's a shared responsibility. So we are working from the European Parliament. We're trying to protect citizens using the technology to give them tools to control their data, to have easier access to applications and maybe services, but also with less fees and less friction. At the same time, the Commission has to see that we have a positive approach and then come with the experts to create the standards that we need to have. And of course, to approach the industry and the developers to understand how this technology can, by default, in the protocol initially, to be compliant with GDPR, for example, or with other principles that we need to apply. So it's a shared responsibility, and I don't think it's something stable because it's, as I said, it's developing.
Is it your impression that enough influential people in the banking industry or maybe central banks, do they understand this technology enough?
Well, some understand it, and that's why some like it and some don't, if I can say that. But one thing that this technology did is to create a response to having centralized banking. For example, in Cyprus, one day after the crisis hit Greece, it hit Cyprus, one day, suddenly, a weekend, people lost their deposits. Some banks shut down, and they couldn't control what they had deposited there for their pensions, for their insurance, for their children. And I think this triggered and caused a reaction. That's why we have the first university that gives you a master on blockchain in Cyprus. So I would say this is connected. So if the central banks have a better solution to guarantee our deposits, then they can compete with new technologies, and then people would not need to use them. But since they cannot, this comes as a solution by the people for the people. So I can tell you that the first approach I had was to understand the virtual currencies and their uses. And I asked Mario Draghi, our central banker, what he thinks of Bitcoin. So his response was, we're monitoring it. They don't really like it. And they don't treat it as a legal tender. And the same day he sent the letter, the European Court of Justice responded to a case that we treat it as legal tender, so there are tax exemptions. So you understand the approach.
Yes, that's clear. I'm amazed we spoke for nearly 10 minutes without mentioning Bitcoin. Are you an investor of Bitcoin? Where's Bitcoin's place?
Basically, I'm an explorer of these technologies. So I'm trying to understand the different currencies, but also I see that it's so much more than.
And how are you educating yourself? How are you learning about this? Because you didn't grow up with this.
No, I'm following a lot of events like this one today. I'm traveling around the world to try to understanding. I'm talking to developers and forums, and also I'm trying myself to learn a bit of coding and to try to open and see how I could start learning about this technology. And of course, I'm trying to download e-wallets. So this was difficult. So unless you try to explore the applications yourself, you cannot understand how useful it can be or the problems you might face.
And we'll be finding out what role Switzerland can play in all this after the break. Welcome back to the Newsmaker Hour this Friday. It's time now for part 2 of our interview with Member of the European Parliament, Eva Kaili. She's a firm believer that blockchain has an important role in our future. And here she tells Amanda Kayne about the viability of a crypto valley in Switzerland.
Well, Switzerland has a tradition in the financial sector of leading it in a way that it's more friendly to the market and the industry. So I do believe there is potential to have actually a crypto valley in Europe here. I really like the approach that they have, but I'm also following the approach of Gibraltar that talks a little bit more out of the box, saying that we need new definitions. We don't try to squeeze everything into the old definition. So I also like this approach. But I think Switzerland is more flexible and it can adapt to the developments of the technology. And I think this is an excellent event with amazing people working in Switzerland in different applications.
And we've, of course, had quite a flurry in ICOs, initial coin offerings here. Tell me what your thoughts on ICOs. Is it really like the future to fund a new company? Is that the way forward?
Well, actually, the ICOs, there is a big hype. I'm not sure it's still there, but actually it's a very interesting tool for crowdfunding. And we don't have a harmonized market in Europe. So I think Switzerland also can be faster there and regulate faster and smarter. But of course, it would help since the banks are overregulated to give funding, risky funding to SMEs. ICOs can be a tool to get funding immediately. And as a security or not, it doesn't matter. But you can get funding to start your idea, or you can get funding to expand your idea. You can give equity or not. Still, the potential is great because you can do everything on your phone. You don't even actually need a bank. And this makes everything much easier, especially if you're a small company or a small startup and you need to explore and you need to find open-minded people. It helps you, giving you an environment and a tool that is really useful.
Could blockchain replace banks one day, do you think?
Well, I would dare to say that it would replace a big part of the banking sector. But I wouldn't say we will not need banks. You know why? Because many people prefer and they like the traditional system, or they don't like innovation up to the point that they will do everything on their phone. They like to have intermediaries. So it's like when we have the ATMs. The ATMs did not shut down the banks. We have people explaining to people, to citizens, how the ATMs work. So I do believe we're going to have banks.
And in terms of going back to the learning point and children, surely we should be teaching our children to program. It's as important, if not more important, than learning languages, would you say?
I would say that coding is a global language, and it would be really useful for our children to learn this language. I can also tell you that digital skills for us is essential in the European Parliament, because if you don't have digital skills, you don't have access to services and opportunities to change your job, because you know that with artificial intelligence, a lot of jobs, the nature of a lot of jobs will change. So actually, I think having digital skills will help you always stay in the best side without being discriminated or without being in the opposite side of increasing the gap of inequalities. You can be on the best side. Our job there is to make sure that people will have the option and free access to education and to acquire digital skills.
Now, I'm going to shift gear a little bit. I want to find out a little bit about your work as a member of the European Parliament. Blockchain is clearly your passion. It's part of what you do. It's not the only thing you do. What else would you say are the most pressing issues for the European Parliament, maybe the top three at this point in time?
We were trying to work on the banking union. So that was one of our main problems, to have capital markets union. We try to have guarantees for our deposits in the European level so that we are a stronger union. And also to work on common taxation or harmonized taxation, because this would also reduce inequalities. So I think one big part of our job is that. The second is to create growth in using innovation in the traditional industry, but exploring also new potential with innovation. And if I can say, besides everything else I could mention, like energy or migration, I can tell you that for me, it's important that we started working on the ethics of the governance of data, which is the fuel for artificial intelligence and everything we've been talking about.
Where do you think the Parliament is failing?
Well, I think we are not as fast as we should, because we saw what happened with the Cambridge Analytica case. And still we have GDPR, so Europe
By that, do you mean with what happened with Facebook?
Yes.
And privacy, data privacy?
Actually, I wouldn't even say is a matter of privacy. It's the manipulation of the news feed or of knowledge or of data to change your perception. So there we don't have enough protection for our citizens, and we have to create transparent algorithms, transparent rules, so that everybody would understand how their data are being used. And also, if somebody is making money using your data, you should be rewarded for that, or you should at least know that, and you have to consent to give away your data.
Switzerland isn't part of Europe, but how does the Parliament view Switzerland, given that it's in the heart of Europe, but it's not
Well,
European?
we wanted Switzerland in Europe, and the Swiss people decided to take some time, I think. I do hope they will reconsider, but it's one of the countries we are working very closely, and I do believe that we have a lot to learn. So,
from Switzerland,
yes,
or from each other?
Switzerland, and I think we can.
What sort of things could you learn?
Well, for example, you have a system, an electoral system that's working. You have the referendums where people participate more. We don't have that in Europe, actually. So you educate your citizens in many different things so that they can make decisions. This is a process that can take years to happen in Europe. So I think we have a lot to learn of the mentality and the culture of the people here.
And fundamentally, is that what went wrong for Britain and Brexit?
That could be the case. I wouldn't say this is the only thing, but I can tell you that misinformation or negative news about Europe could be one of the problems. So maybe migration was, one of the problems, but I think the perception for migration was even worse.
And how can that be changed in the future?
Well, I think if politicians show to citizens that they are controlling by policies the borders, they're protecting their citizens, they have safety nets, and they can run fast to regulate what they have to regulate, but not to overdo it. So, for example, as I said before, the banking union, it's essential to be able to provide SMEs with liquidity, because if you don't do that, people, brain drain will happen. They will move to US, they will go to different countries where they can develop their businesses, they can get easy access to money, actually. I think this is also what we could have won from UK. We could have worked better with them in the financial sector. I think it will mature all of us.
And the future of the EU, is there a country that's ready to go next? Your country, for example?
Well, I don't think we have countries that want to exit. But what I can see is that we're going to have countries, different countries that want to move on faster than the others, that want, not that can. The countries that want to move faster, we will try to make it work faster. So I think this would be important for Europe to move forward without delays.
Is it possible for all these countries to be somehow together, but yet at so many different stages of many different things, be it infrastructure or economy or jobs or...
Welcome to our world. This is what we're fighting with every day. This is what we're trying to achieve. We try to gap these differences and we'll try to reduce that. But I can tell you, even in US, you have the difference between South and North, East and West. This happens everywhere, even in one country itself, in one member state.
Perhaps the cultures aren't so diverse, but I get your point. And speaking of the US, what comes from the US across your desk? Is protectionism something that's widely spoken about within Parliament?
I could tell you, I usually say that, I know it sounds a bit weird, but I think what happened to US, the new president, helped a lot Europe. And it was maybe the best thing that would happen to us because we ran very fast to manage to be autonomous in different things. And I think this is important. So we try to work more into integrating policies and trying to work better with us and decide to have common unions like energy union, a digital single market. And instead of postponing that all the time, we try to remove obstacles and barriers among us much faster.
And just one quick question on Switzerland again. You have no fear that there's any relationship crisis there between Europe and Switzerland?
Not from what I know of. But, you know, I don't take anything for granted. Even inside the EU, you know, we have electoral results that they are challenging and that we have to understand the message that citizens are sending, and we have to adapt into a modern responses, political responses. So we have to have a clear message. We have to work fast and a lot. I'm working in several files, and I see that it's never enough because things are happening also very fast around you, and you have to be a global player. As I said, AI will transform everything. And we have, before we reach in the banking union, we have already to start reconsidering the new tax system, taking under consideration the virtual currencies, or seeing how a cashless society could work out without cash. So there are many things we should try to understand. Minimum wage, minimum income. These are discussions that we have in Europe. We have to provide, we talk about the digital tax, how this can be redistributed through a minimum income, for example. So you understand we have to give responses that we didn't, we had more time, but we didn't do that earlier.
How is it to be a woman in Parliament, Eva?
It's exciting. And I have to tell you that the fight to have more women in politics has been working. I see already in many forums and discussions a lot of women taking important positions and working on legislation.
Still not enough women in technology, though, for example. How can what's worked for Parliament then be sort of transferred to technology?
Our commissioner is a woman, actually, for digital, Maria Gabriel, and she's a young woman. So yesterday we had a digital day in the European Parliament. We had more women than men. So what we have to do and what we started even as pilots is teaching girls how to code, trying to give them the tools to enter this new technology, because with that you can even work from home. So it can be a solution for the difficult roles that women have to play. So we're doing a lot of things. We even talk about reducing the gap between the salaries up to zero. We are trying to challenge companies to have always women on the boards.
Did you ever have any challenges as a woman?
I had a lot since I was young. And that's why I think I talk from experience, because you have to prove more than men do. I think you face the same problems. We cannot talk about it very often, but the stereotypes are there and the mentalities are hard to fight. It takes generations to change. But I think there are women like you that they are opening the road to other women, and they are fighting for their job, in their job, and I think working harder than men sometimes to prove that they should not be doubted.